So the next thing that we want to do is go to localhost with your specific port /php myadmin. Okay, and I'm gonna delete this guy. Maybe. All right, no, I'm not. Just pretend like I don't have this web service database already set up, because I already do, and the only way that you're going to be able to follow along is pretending that I don't have it. Okay, just play along here. What we need to do is create a new database. Again, our database is kind of like a filing cabinet again. So we have our server, which is a filing cabinet, and then we have our database, which is another filing cabinet, and we can mix and match files. Okay. Very bad at explaining this stuff, but hopefully you guys will follow along once we get into working with this. It's gonna be pretty simple. We need to create a new database. Again, if you just go to your PHP myadmin, which will only work if you have this MySQL up and running as well within your control panel. PHP myadmin, and then we're gonna type in our database. I'm gonna say web service because I don't have a web service database yet. Shoot, I forgot. You guys can't see me winking at you. I'm just going to do web service 1. You guys just do web service because I can't recreate the same database. Okay, so just say web service. Hit create, and as you can see, we have a new database. If we go back to our PHP admin, web service, and web service 1. Go ahead and click on web service 1 or just stay on the page that it brought you to. The next thing that we need to do is create some sheets or tables. So tables hold all of our specific information about a specific topic. So we could have a table of awesome people. We could have a table of our favorite foods. We could have a table of classes that we have taken in college or whatever you guys want to think about. And then within those tables, we can have different characteristics. So if we did do like favorite food, we could be like type of food, like fruit, meat, dairy, whatever. We could have how hot or spicy it is, how sweet or sour it is. There's a bunch of different things we could do within each table as well. So it kind of just breaks down systematically, and we're going to create 2 tables, one for our users, and we're going to have 3 fields. These are the 3 characteristics that we're going to define within our users table. So just go ahead and hit enter or OK, go, whatever it is. Generally it's go when you're working with MySQL. And these are 3 field sets or characteristics of a user within our users table. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an ID, which is just going to make sure that we keep track of all of our users. And we're going to have auto increment up to 11 digits. So that's quite a few users that we're going to be able to keep track of. And we also want this to be unique. You guys will understand how this works once we start adding users. So again, if this is a little bit confusing, if you've never done MySQL, don't worry about it, guys. Trust me, I know you will understand this once we start using our database and all that stuff. But basically an ID is going to give a number to each user that we register within our users table. So if I'm the first person being registered, I would have an ID of 1, and then the next time someone registers, it's going to auto increment and give them the ID of 2. And all of our IDs are going to be unique. Whether we delete our user, add a new user, it's always going to be a unique number, always going up by 1 from the previous ID number. Kind of confusing. Don't worry about it too much, but it is an int value, so it's just kind of like a number, whole number, whatever. Cool. Next thing that we want is a username and a password. Now these won't be integer values. We're going to use varchar for this, and we could use text or whatever. We're going to give our length 64 here. So obviously you guys probably know what a username is, and a password. Don't really have to explain it, but we want our usernames to be unique. We don't want to have more than one username that's the same. So we want to change our username to be unique. Some people might have the same passwords, but it doesn't really matter as long as their username is different, right? So that's pretty much our setup. Don't worry too much about the type and this length and kind of all this other stuff. Don't worry about too much. This isn't a MySQL tutorial. It's a very simple thing to grasp once you start using MySQL. You don't really need to learn it that much. Pretty easy to get a grasp of how it works. We're going to hit save. So now we have our users table set up with this information here. We can edit this stuff, but it's already set up perfectly, so we won't have to. And then also we could have just called a query. As of here, it spits out what actually was ran when we created or saved that information. We could copy that and paste it within this MySQL thing and run queries as well. So that would have done the exact same thing as using the graphic user interface that we just did. But we could do it this way when we set up our new table called comments if we wanted. Probably not going to, because it's a lot easier if we just go home. If we go to our web service 1 and just create a new table of all of our comments. Alright, so let's create our new table, which is going to be our comments table. This is actually going to have 4 fields, and we're going to hit go. The first field, again, is going to be our ID. We're just going to put post ID, integer, value of 11, and index unique, and auto increment. Okay, again, sorry if this is confusing you guys. The next one, we want to know what username said the comment. So we're just going to have username here, varchar, care, I don't know. We had, I think, 64 for the length. Doesn't really matter. Again, this is just kind of safety precaution. We aren't too worried about like security and stuff through this tutorial. Just going through kind of the basics. All these remaining ones will be varchars as well, varchar, whatever. I know someone's going to make fun of me for not being able to pronounce that or whatever. So go ahead and do that. And then also we're going to have title and message of our post. So now we're going to know who wrote the post, what their title was, and what their message contained. And we don't need to add anything else to these different field names or field sets. We're just going to save this, and now we see our query we could have done, but whatever. We have our 2 tables set up. Everything's good to go. But the next thing that we have to do is set up our username. Basically what's going to happen now is we're going to have one PHP file, which is our config file, that connects to this specific database. It's going to be like, hey, connect to the comment table, make some changes, add a new comment for this person, and add a new user within the user table. It's going to be able to interact with this MySQL database through a configuration file. But to make any changes to our database, we need to have a privileged user to make those changes. But in order to make these changes, you need to be a privileged user. We're going to have only one privileged user to be able to access this database and make changes to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create that privileged user, put that privileged user's login credentials with our MySQL database credentials into that config file. So anytime we access the config file, we'll be able to make these changes. But first we need to create that user. So let's go back to the PHP myadmin. Just go ahead and click that, and we're going to say privileges. But just go ahead and click this add new user here, and for a username we're going to put whatever you guys want. I'm going to put my name, Trav. Our host will be localhost, or you could select local here. Our password, we could say no password, but we probably want to have a password, especially when we put it online, because otherwise people would be able to crack this password. So we want to make sure this password's super secure, and we probably want to make sure our username's pretty kind of random too as well. That way no one will be able to hack into our system, because if they did guess our username and password, they could wipe out our entire database, or they could change what you said. Like if they could hack into your Facebook post and change what you said to someone and make it sound really bad or something. So we kind of want to make sure this user's information is pretty secure. So I'm going to put all lowercase bacon1, pretty secure password, bacon1, and there we go. You might also want to use like this generate. As you can see here, you can use generate, copy and paste this somewhere, or write it down somewhere. But you know, I think bacon1 is a pretty good password. Bacon1. Alright. The next thing that we want to do is define what privileges this user has. So we want them to be able to create new tables, alter new tables, make changes, index stuff, drop information or drop tables, select information from our database, insert. Pretty much we want this user to do everything. So we can just hit check all, and these are all the privileges that the user has. And the last thing that we have to do is hit go. Now we have created our new user, which is trav at localhost. So make sure you remember this information. Var car care var care var car var care, I don't know.